It will be difficult to distribute it, but it is totally possible for a very simple reason. It can be distributed through the cold chain that was developed in Russia and in many other countries for so-called blood components products, immunoglobulins. Doctors and distributors know how to deal with preparations that are frozen at -18. Each person whom we can vaccinate will be less person left for the disease, will be one more person belonging to social solidarity against the disease. We all know that it takes more than a month to establish immunity after the vaccination, so we will need to wait for 2-3 months. But I believe that if we combine vaccine with social discipline, with self-isolation, we can see results very fast.
Next, inadmissible abuse. Human rights and media groups have attacked new French police policies at the weekend's mass rallies against a new security bill. More than 140 were arrested, including 2 journalists. RT's Charlotte Dubensky's got the story.
Saturday's protest against the draft laws on security and enshrining Republican values saw police deploy new crowd control tactics. Essentially a smash and grab. Security forces smashing into the protests and grabbing out individuals who they think may be troublemakers. Nearly 150 people were detained, provoking anger from some that described these detentions as being arbitrary.
This Saturday, December 12th, a number of observers saw inadmissible abuse linked to a deployment of brutal police and military officers and the infringement of the right to demonstrate. That includes mass arrests, unjustified charging to break up a procession, and detention without legitimate reason, beyond legal limits.
I was at the police station where several protesters were held, including a 17-year-old young woman. This underage girl was arrested at Saturday's demonstration. She didn't do anything wrong except she was protesting and recording police officers on camera. This is unspeakable.
It wasn't just protesters being detained. 2 journalists were also taken in. One was suspected of planning to orchestrate violence, refusing to obey a police dispersal order and covering their face. Now, given the current mood in France, with concerns being raised about press freedom, there are fears in some quarters that this is a slippery slope.
The strategy of Paris police force is to dissuade people from protesting, and this is unacceptable. The main aim of this strategy is to cast doubt on the right to protest. In fact, many people got arrested for no apparent reason whatsoever. This is some kind of communication campaign to persuade people that the government has stopped violent and aggressive actions, but they did not, and this is unbearable.
It comes as the latest press freedom index shows that France has dropped down the list. Amongst the concerns include problems for reporters covering demonstrations, having their equipment confiscated and being injured at protests, not just by the police, but even by demonstrators themselves sometimes. There's also a red flag over judicial investigations and attempts to force journalists to reveal their contacts. The French government says it respects press freedoms, but these new tactics and the detention of journalists is likely to add to the fury here in France, with some warning that the list of inadmissible abuses is growing by the day. Charlotte Dubinsky, RT, Paris.
Washington's imposed sanctions on Turkey over its purchase of Russia's S-400 surface-to-air missile system. But an angry President Erdogan said he'd hoped for better treatment.
We expect support, not sanctions, from our NATO ally, the United States of America, in our battle against terrorist organizations and forces that have plans for our region.
Turkey is a valued ally and an important regional security partner for the United States, and we seek to continue our decades-long history of productive defense sector cooperation by removing the obstacle of Turkey's S-400 possession as soon as possible.
So the embargoes target Turkey's defence industry and officials whose assets will be frozen and their visas restricted. Russia's foreign minister says the move breaks international law, but that said, he's not surprised.
This is, of course, another example of arrogance towards international law, a manifestation of illegitimate, unilateral, coercive measures that the United States has been using for many years, even decades, left and right. And of course, it doesn't increase US authority on the international arena, where it is a responsible participant in the International Division of Labour, including military and technical cooperation.
Well, Ankara's bought Russia's S-400 defence system last year. Washington threatened to punish Turkey ever since, claiming the system's a danger to NATO. But historian Gerald Horne says it all comes down to money.
The only way for Turkey to satisfy Washington would be to surrender sovereignty and basically amount to the 51st U.S. state. Turkey wants to buy this S-400 system from Russia. The United States does not want Turkey to do so because in many ways, NATO is just a weapons racket. It's just a way for member states to pour money into the United States by buying complex military materiel from U.S. contractors like Raytheon and Boeing and all the rest. Turkey no longer wants to participate in that racket, and therein lies the conflict. With regard to NATO, the attempted expansion of NATO, for example, into the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, may not only be an attempt to target Moscow, it may be an attempt to target Turkey as well, following an expulsion of Turkey from NATO or putting further pressure on NATO with regard to accepting Georgia as a NATO member. This is a very serious conflict.
Across the US, members of the Electoral College now have cast their votes and officially handed Joe Biden victory in the presidential election. However, Donald Trump says his legal challenge over alleged voter fraud isn't over. Meantime, the Trump administration's Attorney General, Bill Barr, has resigned. He earlier found no evidence of widespread election fraud. Reporting from New York with all the latest on this morning, Caleb Mopin.
Donald Trump is still not conceding. Donald Trump says he is the legitimate winner of the 2020 election.
No, it's not over. We keep going, and we're going to continue to go forward. We have numerous local cases where, in some of the states that got rigged and robbed from us.
Now, there was a last-ditch effort to try and win the White House for Trump in the Supreme Court. We saw the state of Texas file to have the results in the state of Georgia, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin overturned based on allegations of fraud. The Supreme Court opted not to hear the case. They threw it out of court, and as a result, today's Electoral College voting proceeded, and there was a vote, and Joe Biden has pulled ahead as the clear winner of that vote with a clear majority. Now, in the aftermath of the Supreme Court turning down Trump's proposal and Trump's case and the Texas intervention, we saw leaders of the Texas Republican Party talk about the need to form some kind of union of what they're referring to as law-abiding states.
The Supreme Court, in tossing the Texas lawsuit, has decreed that a state can take unconstitutional actions and violate its own election law. Perhaps law-abiding states should bond together and form a union of states that will abide by the Constitution.
Now, divisions in the United States are intensifying. There have been repeated clashes between left-wing and right-wing protesters across the country. Just this weekend, we saw crowds of Proud Boys, that's a right-wing organization, clashing with Antifa left-wing activists. And there was violence. The police actually declared the situation to be a riot after shots were fired. it's pretty clear that on January 20th, Joe Biden will be sworn in as the 46th president of the United States. It'll be on January 6th that Congress approves the Electoral College votes, and that seems to be pretty unstoppable at this point. However, that's unlikely to reunify the country. There's a lot of distrust, a lot of anger, a lot of animosity. Trump supporters feel this election was stolen from them. Trump's opponents are still very angry about things that have gone on over the last 4 years, and it's very unlikely that the inauguration of Joe Biden is going to simply heal these wounds. A lot of deep divisions in U.S. society.
But all that said, too, legal and media analyst Lionel told us the U.S. electoral system hardly stands up to modern voting best practice these days.
I want to be the president of the United States. What is the fewest number of states I can win to get 270 electoral votes? Not necessarily the biggest states, but they normally comprise in terms of size. Out of the 50 states, you would need to only win 11. This was done in 2012. The number may have changed somewhat, but just think about this. 11 states, the biggies, California, New York, etc., and it would comprise 27% of the popular vote, and you could be president. You want to talk anger? Try that one on for size. The idea of this is simply this. It's not that you're voting. In the old days, nobody trusted the citizen to understand the complexity of this. The Founding Fathers didn't want necessarily senators to vote, but they thought that we were just too busy with plowing and herding cattle to understand this. That's why the electors would meet oftentimes well after the election, because it took so long for them to get to their state capitals. It seems archaic, it seems anachronistic, but there's an incredible brilliance in this, because if you're the winner, it balances out. If you're the loser, it's antediluvian, it's archaic, it's antiquarian, it's ossified. So it depends on whose ox is gored. But I love the system. I just love it because it's part of who we are, confused and screwed up.
Lionel, it's 9:15 Moscow time. Good morning. This is ahead as mainstream outlets publish a fresh, outlandish scheme of Russian plotting against opposition figure Alexei Navalny. We examined those claims in some more depth here on RT International.
The world is driven by dreamers, shaped by thinkers and those with vision.
Who dares, thinks. We dare to ask.
Every dollar printed going forward, because it can't be absorbed by the account chicanery and fraudulent accounting of quantitative easing, goes into something called the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and the value of that money printing will now debase the currency for real. And this is going to be the end game, as it were, because once the, quote, inflation genie is out of the bottle, you can't put it back into the bottle.
Again, 17 past the hour. Next, 4 mainstream media outlets have published a huge investigation claiming to trace Russian security officers who followed opposition figure Alexei Navalny since 2017. But it appears to raise more questions than answers too. Here's our senior correspondent, Murad Gazdiev.
On Monday, CNN, Der Spiegel, and several other outlets premiered their latest hit, a tale about how a dozen Russian FSB agents tailed Navalny for years. And so incompetent were they that the scriptwriters claim they managed to identify them, their phone numbers, their every step, their calls, their texts, their addresses. They even uncovered a prior, deadly plot to poison Navalny with one of the most toxic substances known to man. Novichok, our hero, forgot about it. He remembered just a few days ago. Due to a clumsy mistake by Russian intelligence, his wife took the hit. she apparently felt terrible, dreadful, like never before. So she went for a nap, and it apparently cured her.
Alexei Navalny believes that the mysterious sickness his wife describes is very similar to the feeling of impending death that he experienced on board the airplane on 20th August after being poisoned with Novichok.
Aside from the comically incompetent Russian spies and agents who somehow for many years fooled the world into thinking that they weren't clowns, and aside from Navalny's amazing resistance to being killed, I mean, this guy would put Bugs Bunny or the Roadrunner to shame. Aside from that, what really stood out in this claim that the laughably useless Russians have a nanosubstance which removes all traces of chemical weapons, which they somehow forgot to use.
Institute of the Problems of Chemical Energy claimed the 2018 invention of nanosorbent set for removing traces of chemical weapons from infected sites. Crucially, at least one member of the FSB squad is in frequent telephone contact with a scientist from this institute.
Now, my big question in all of this isn't about it all looking, reading and sounding like fan fiction or a CIA agent's daydream about how he would expose the Russians and be applauded by his peers. No, my big question is about, whether any of it's true. Because there are two explanations. And the first one is that these journalists were given the entire pitch, the data, by Western intelligence agencies, because they sure as heck didn't find it in the darknet, as Navalny alluded. That's a lie. You don't find the geolocation data of FBI agents' cell phones on the darknet, which is pretty horrendous. It would mean Western intelligence agencies and journalists are in cahoots. The second explanation is that this eye-opening expose is about as worthless as the last one.
Hospital tests show that the Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, was poisoned by a nerve agent from the Novichok group.
So, a few days ago, British pundits claimed that Russian spies tried to poison Navalny again while he was in a coma. I mean, how hard would it be? He's right there, literally in a coma. If you wanted to kill him, you really, really couldn't miss. And this latest grand investigation claims that the last grand investigation was, well, made up.
Note also that there is no data about any FSB poisoners residing in Omsk when Navalny was there in the hospital. Therefore, the rumor that FSB agents could possibly have poisoned him again in Omsk, which was distributed by the Times, is not true.
This is what you call open-ended.
Lockdowns and social distancing have become synonymous with a pandemic, haven't they? But many parents are really worried about how a lack of social interaction could be affecting their children's mental health.
My daughter has seen more giraffes at the zoo than she's seen other kids.
Ages 2, 3 and 4 are really important for learning how to share, learning how to play outside. What isn't he getting by not being able to run around the neighbourhood with his friends?
A Cambridge University study then found a statistically significant increase in depression among children after lockdown. US psychology expert Catherine Hirsch-Pesic told us the effect of the restrictions often depends too on the age of the child.
I think it's very important for young children to play with peers. When they play with peers, that's how they learn how to share. It's how they learn how to navigate the social environment. For the children who are in the 4, 5, 6, they'll definitely remember this time. Once we tell them that it's safe to be with people again, then I suspect they will work hard to overcome it, because we gravitate toward, there's like a magnetic pull to people. So I think we'll be all right. Some of the older children who are maybe in middle school and high school, for them this is truly such a difficult period because they're with peers all the time. Some will probably go through exacerbated mental issues that we're going to want to deal with. And so we have to be equipped at the end to help these children learn to feel safe with other children of their age.
Meantime, as the British government allows public services to stay open even in areas hardest hit by the pandemic, it's been revealed Prime Minister Boris Johnson was warned by top health officials that easing measures for Christmas would spark a third wave.
A relaxation of restrictions on social contact, combined with the natural desire to celebrate, inevitably increases the spread of the virus. Whilst we are not at this point asking for a change in the proposed Christmas rules, we are concerned that the current public debate on those rules is ignoring the significant extra risk involved.
Well, a new three-tier system came into force on December the 2nd in England, with many parts of the southeast, including London, now being moved into the top alert level. This third tier is applied to regions where the infection rate's highest. While it strictly prohibits households mixing with each other, it does allow restaurants and bars to open for takeaway and delivery only. All other shops and public services can also remain open, including anything from beauty salons to gyms and churches. New daily coronavirus infections remain high too, and officials have even confirmed a new variant of the virus has been detected. National Health Service chiefs, though, say they did alert the government back in September about easing out of lockdown restrictions. At the time, the NHS was reportedly treating around 500 COVID-19 patients, but by December the 10th, that figure had soared to 13,000. We spoke to British senior clinical lecturer, one of them, about it, and about the importance of safety measures in a month associated with families, of course, at this festive time coming together.
The virus is there, case numbers are there, we need to have a very restricted Christmas. What is important is that you are honest and believable and trusted, and you tell your people that we have a problem. It is not possible to meet on 23rd, 24th, 25th of December. However, very soon in the new year, it will become possible. So that is being truthful and honest, and you explain to people that the vaccines are coming. And when the vaccines are coming and most people have been immunized, it will be safer, easier and better to meet up. You don't want to be raising your glasses to say, we miss our departed friends.
Let's take a look at some news in brief. Finally, for now, anti-vaccine protesters have clashed with London police after a mass vaccination campaign started across the country. The capital's also been moved, as mentioned just now, into the highest tier of COVID restrictions as cases rise. Indian farmers have stepped up their protests against new farm laws designed to open up the country's agricultural market. Workers held hunger strikes and blockaded roads on fears that removal of subsidies and minimum price guarantees would hurt them financially. Argentinians have gathered to watch the world's only total solar eclipse this year. There it is. Blinking, you'll miss it, though. It plunged parts of the country into darkness for around 2 minutes. People wore special glasses to block out ultraviolet rays and then look safely at that natural phenomenon, although not long to do it. Well, that's the way things are looking so far this morning. That's the wrap so far this Tuesday from Moscow. Thanks for watching. From me, Kevin Owen, and the rest of the team. Have a super day.